8. A treasure trove of classic cars found in a French barn. Imagine finding a collection of 60 rare and vintage cars that have been hidden inside a barn for decades. That's what happened to two experts from Art Curial Motors, a French auction house, back in 2014. They were invited by the heirs of Roger Bayon, a former transportation big shot who amassed a remarkable fleet of automobiles from the 1930s to the 1970s. The cars were kept in storage in various buildings on a farm in western France. They were caked in dust and rust, but they were also priceless gems of automotive history. Among them were classic models by Maserati, Bugatti, Ferrari, Hispano-Suiza, Talbot Lago, Panhard Levasseur, Delahaye, and Allagash. One of the most stunning finds was a Ferrari 250 GT California SWB, one of only 37 in existence. It belonged to French actor Alain Delon, who drove it with Jane Fonda and Shirley MacLaine. The car's worth between $12 and $15 million. The vehicles were auctioned off by Art Curial Motor Cars on February 6, 2015 in Paris. The sale attracted buyers from all over the world and fetched a total bid of $28.5 million. The Ferrari alone sold for $18.5 million, setting a new world record. The barn find was dubbed the discovery of the century by Art Curial Motor Cars. It served as a rare opportunity to witness some of the most iconic cars ever made come out of their long slumber. 7. The lost fleet of Alfa Romeos. In 2012, a group of explorers found something remarkable inside an abandoned Belgian castle. They discovered 6 Alfa Romeo sports cars from the 1960s hidden under the floor of a large hall. The castle, known as Kasteel van Heers, Castle of Heers, dates back to the 13th century and once belonged to a noble family. It's been empty and decaying since the 1980s, when its last owner died. The explorers entered the castle through a hole in the fence and made their way to a hall filled with stained glass windows. It was there that they noticed a wooden trapdoor leading to an underground garage. They opened it and were stunned by what they saw. 6 Alfa Romeos covered in dust and cobwebs, some still with keys in their ignition. They were models like the Giulia Sprint GT Veloce, Giulia Sprint Speciale, and Giulietta Spider Veloce. The cars were in states of disrepair, but still had original parts and features. They would be worth hundreds of thousands of euros if restored. The explorers took photos and videos of their find and posted them on the internet, attracting worldwide attention. It was said Michel Desmaziers, one of the castle's owners, built one of the prototypes of the Alfa Romeo himself, and there are documents to prove that he entered a race with the car in 1964. Up until 2007, when the castle was taken over, Michel and his wife lived inside a tiny portion of the abandoned building. They allegedly had a buyer lined up for the castle, but after years of unfulfilled promises, the government seized the property and everything inside of it. The Alphas were ultimately auctioned off in 2015 and sold for €117,000. 6. The ghost trains of the Allagash. In the remote northern woods of Maine, there's a hidden treasure few people have had the luxury of seeing. 2 rusty steam locomotives that once hauled logs across the vast wilderness. These ghost trains are a relic of a bygone era, when logging was a growing industry and railroads were the only way to transport material. The trains were owned by the Eagle Lake and West Branch Railroad, which operated from 1927 to 1933. The railroad was created by Edward Lacroix, a Canadian entrepreneur who secured a contract to harvest spruce trees from the Allagash region. Lacroix used a genius system of dams, canals and sluices to float logs from Eagle Lake down to Chamberlain Lake, where they were then loaded onto flat cars and pulled by trains along a 13-mile track. The railroad was short-lived though. The Great Depression hit the logging industry hard, and Lacroix's contract ended in 1933. He decided to abandon his equipment in the woods instead of paying for their removal. The trains were left in a shed near Eagle Lake where they slowly decayed with time. Today, the trains are part of the Allagash Wilderness Waterway, a state park that preserves the area's natural beauty and history. The locomotives are only accessible by canoe or snowmobile depending on the season. Visitors can marvel at their size and design, and imagine what life must have been like for the loggers who worked on them. The ghost trains of the Allagash offer a glimpse into Maine's past. They're also reminders of how nature can reclaim what humans once left behind. 5. Norman Timms Special. Norman Timms was an American mechanical engineer and car designer in the 20th century. He worked with Preston Tucker on his innovative Tucker automobiles. He also built Indy cars for sponsors, such as the Blue Crown Spark Plug Specials that won the Indianapolis 500 3 times in a row. He was well known for his expertise in aerodynamics and ground effects, which improved the performance of many race cars. One of his most remarkable creations was the Norman Timms Special, a custom vehicle from 1948. It was a sleek and elegant streamliner with a mid-mounted 1948 Buick straight-eight engine. The car had no doors, windows, or trunk, and it had a single-piece aluminium body that could be lifted in order to access the engine and cockpit. It cost about $10,000 to build and was inspired by the auto union races of the 1930s. The Norman Timms Special was featured in both magazines and exhibitions, such as Motor Trend and the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. But it was eventually abandoned in a California desert for unknown reasons. It was rediscovered by a collector named Gary Cervelli in 2002, who restored it to its former glory. The car is now considered one of the most beautiful and iconic custom vehicles ever made. Norman Timms died in 1987 at the ripe old age of 83. He left behind a legacy of innovation and craftsmanship that still inspires many car enthusiasts to this day. 4. 36 Corvettes. In 1989, VH1, a music channel, decided to organize a contest and offer an incredible prize: 36 Corvettes, one from each year of production since 1953. The channel bought the cars for about $610,000 and spent another $250,000 advertising. The contest attracted over 4 million entries at $2 each. The prize ultimately went to Dennis Amadeo, a Long Island carpenter. He sent in about a dozen entries after hearing about the contest on the radio, but he didn't get to keep his prize for long. He was contacted by Peter Max, a German-born pop artist who had a vision of using the Corvettes as canvases for colorful paintings. Max offered Amadeo $250,000 in cash, plus $250,000 worth of his artwork in exchange for the vehicles. Amadeo agreed to sell the collection to Max, who planned to transform them into an art project he called 36 Corvettes plus one. But Max never finished his creative vision. He stored the cars in New York City for decades, where they gathered dust and decayed. Some of them were vandalized or damaged. In 2014, Max sold his collection to some investors. The cars were restored, then displayed at various venues and events before being given away in another 2020 sweepstakes. The new contest aimed to raise money for military veterans through donations. The story of the 36 Corvettes is a fascinating one that involves music, art, history, and luck. It shows how one man's dream can quickly turn into another man's nightmare. Would you enter into a sweepstakes like this? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe to the channel if you like what you've seen so far. 3. Robot Parking Lot. The Auto Safe Sky Park was a futuristic car park in Edinburgh that used robots to stack cars on top of each other in a multi-story building. It opened in 2001, and these robots would take over the vehicles from drivers who entered bays and move them to the nearest open spot using elevators and turntables. But the project soon faced technical issues and financial losses. One day, they simply closed the doors, and they remained that way for several years. The car park was shut down without warning, leaving some customers unable to get their vehicles back. For over a decade, the building remained empty until it was finally demolished in 2018. During the demolition, workers found several abandoned cars that had been left behind by their owners. Some of them were covered in dust and cobwebs, while others had flat tires and rusted parts. The cars included luxury models like a Fiat Uno, a Mercedes E320, a Peugeot 406, and even an Austin Maestro. The mystery of why they were abandoned has been partly solved by some former customers and employees of the car park. According to them, the owners had either moved away or died without leaving any contact details, while others simply forgot about their cars or decided they weren't worth retrieving. The car park also had poor records and communication systems, making it difficult to track down the owners. The abandoned vehicles have become a curiosity for many people who've seen photos of them online or visited the site before it was fully demolished. They've also raised questions about the viability and reliability of automated parking systems, especially when they fail unexpectedly. The Autosafe Sky Park was an ambitious project that aimed to revolutionize urban parking, but it ended up a forgotten relic. 2. The Highway of Death. The Highway of Death runs from Kuwait to Basra, Iraq. On this route in 1991, during the Gulf War, coalition forces destroyed some civilian vehicles and fleeing Iraqi army formations. War's catastrophic consequences can be seen on this infamous road. One of the last seen Persian Gulf War battles was dubbed the Highway of Death by Western media. The US Air Force, along with its allies, launched huge airstrikes on 2 routes connecting Kuwait and the Iraqi border in 1991. The Iraqi army evacuated Kuwait as a consequence, and thousands of vehicles, like cars and armored equipment, were abandoned and destroyed. Across Kuwaiti and Iraqi territories lie these 2 death highways. Al-Jara, the border town of Safwan, Iraq, and Basra were all connected by the 6-lane Highway 80. Al-Jara to Qasra was accessible by a different seaside road. Iraq utilized the road to transport soldiers into the emirate during the invasion of Kuwait in 1990. On February 24, 1991, international coalition troops launched a ground operation to free the site. The coalition's airstrikes had effectively cut off Iraqi forces on the front lines. While some troops made an effort to fight back, the majority withdrew. The situation for the Iraqi soldiers in Kuwait was getting worse. President Saddam Hussein announced the departure of all Iraqi soldiers on January 26th. After Iraq withdrew from Kuwait, White House Secretary Marlin Fitzwater said the United States and its allies would refrain from attacking the army. As Arab and US Marines arrived in Kuwait on the same day, the US 7th Corps dashed all the way from the west of Kuwait in the Iraqi desert to Basra in the east, surrounding all Iraqi forces in Kuwait. The Iraqi defenses collapsed, and some soldiers tried to escape by taking any car they could. This caused a traffic jam on the Highway of Death, which had many kinds of vehicles on it, such as tanks, guns, fire engines, police cars, vans, limos, and private cars. 1. Asmara's Tank Graveyard, a legacy of war and liberation in Eritrea. The tank graveyard in Asmara, Eritrea, is a field full of thousands of military vehicles that were used in a 30-year war with Ethiopia. The war began in 1961 when Eritrea fought for its independence, and ended in 1991 when the country became a de facto state. The war was one of Africa's longest and bloodiest struggles, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives and displacing millions. The tank graveyard is found on the outskirts of Asmara, the capital city of Eritrea. It covers about 37 acres and contains tanks, trucks, cars, buses, helicopters, planes, and more from both sides of the war. Some of the vehicles are stacked on top of one another. Others are scattered around or buried under sand and dirt. The vehicles are mostly Soviet or Chinese-made models that were supplied to Ethiopia by its allies in the Cold War. The tank graveyard's not an official tourist attraction, but it does attract visitors. Some of them see it as a symbol of resilience and courage, while others see it as a testament to the futility of war. The tank graveyard also serves as a source of scrap metal for locals who salvage parts. Thanks for watching. Which of these vehicles did you find the most interesting? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.